question is from August. If someone has no artistic talent, but has an idea and hires an artist to create their idea or vision, who owns the rights to the artwork? Well, I'm glad you asked, August, because usually it's the artist that owns the rights, regardless of whose idea it is. Now, when is there an exception to the artist owning the rights? If the artist signs the rights over to their client. Most of the commission works that Drew does, pretty much everything that Drew paints. My husband, Drew Brophy, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's known for his surf art and his sacred geometry art, like the work behind me. Almost everything he creates is a commission piece. And almost every commission piece, even though it's created in his style and with his imagination, the client who hired him to do it usually has an idea of what they want. They might say, well, I want you to capture my favorite surf spot at this particular beach, and there's a palm tree here, and maybe you could add in flowers here or whatever. Even when Drew paints or creates work based on what someone else asked for, Drew still owns the copyrights to the artwork, and he retains all rights, all reproduction rights to that artwork. Sometimes you'll be commissioned to do something, and the person who commissioned you, they want to be the owner of the artwork. That's okay if you agree. Now, I think, I have really strong opinions about this. Artists who want to be known for their work, for their style, who are in the art business for the long term, where they've kind of turned their work and their persona into a brand, they really need to own all the copyrights to the work, especially if they have a distinctive style that people can point out, that people can know it's their work. Why is this? Why do I think it's really important to own the copyrights to your work? Because you really need to have control over what happens to your art if you are in this for the long term. And what I mean long term is, this is what you plan on doing for your business. So let's say that I'm going to use another artist as an example, Jim Phillips. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jim Phillips' work. His work is really fun and edgy and a little poppy. And it's also very, very distinctive. When you see a Jim Phillips piece of art, you know it's his if you're familiar with his work. Well, a couple years ago, a famous clothing designer stole his art straight out of one of his books and printed Jim Phillips' artwork on an entire clothing line. I remember seeing this and not knowing it was stolen and saying, wow, that's kind of unusual that Jim Phillips would license his art to be on fashion items. It just kind of doesn't fit with his persona. And then I found out that this fashion designer actually stole his work. So why am I telling that story? Because if somebody takes your work, if you give somebody the rights to your work and it's very recognizable and you have built a brand around your work, and then you sell the rights to something and they take it and they do something really stupid with it. They print it on something that is embarrassing to you and your brand, and that will make your fans angry, and they'll be angry at you because you let it happen. That's why. You really just want to protect the persona of your brand, of your art, of your legacy, and all that. That's not to say that, there's a lot of illustrators out there that consider themselves a hired hand, and they sell their copyrights to their clients That's a business model that you can choose if you want to. I talk about that quite a bit in my book, Art, Money, and Success, and I really go into detail about it. I'm not saying that that's a bad business model to sell your copyrights. What I'm saying is if you want to be known for your work, then it's a bad business model. But if your business model is to sell all your copyrights and be a hired hand and be an illustrator and be anonymous artist, that's totally okay. It's a choice. Just make sure it's a choice and it's not something that's being forced on you. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and I would love to answer, and I will try not to miss question, which is what I do sometimes. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic, and that is, this is a totally unrelated topic, but Talia asked me, what is the best way to contact magazines for art submissions? And she also asked about getting your art on TV and movie sets. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, contacting magazines for art submissions. This is really easy. You just go to the magazine website, and almost every magazine is going to have submission guidelines, and just follow their instructions. If they don't have submission guidelines, get the email address of the editor, send them a lovely short email saying, hey, I love your magazine. I think my work would be a great fit for it, and I would love it if you would take my offer of being able to print it on the cover or elsewhere in your magazine. Attached is a sample image. Now keep in mind that you need to send a lot of these out to just get one, because that's how everything works. It's the nature of how things work. I had to do this. There's a magazine called Awakenings magazine, and Drew and I really wanted his Sacred Geometry art to be on the cover of it. I emailed the editor and the owner numerous times before I finally got a response. And I'm going to say I emailed them maybe a year and a half before they finally took us up on the offer. So was it worth it? Yeah, absolutely was worth it. And since then, I've developed a really good relationship with them. And since then, we've done an art exhibit at their location, and Drew's written articles for their magazine. So it was worth me chasing them down. It was worth the time. So that's how you do that. I want to go back. Somebody had a question about copyrights. Barb asked, do you include the copyright info in every commission contract? Barb, I'm really glad you asked that question. Yes. I put a little statement in every price quote or proposal that I send to people, and it's just a little statement that says, artist retains all copyrights and reproduction rights to the artwork. So you can copy that verbatim, what I just said, and just put that in there, and that way it's clear. Legally, you don't even have to put that in there. Legally, you own the copyrights unless you sign your copyrights away. Sometimes you get tricked into signing your copyrights away. How do you get tricked into it? They'll send you something and say, oh, we just need you to sign this so we can cut you a check. And if you read it, it might say this is a work for hire. Work for hire is a legal term that if you agree to it by signing it, you're giving them all your copyrights. So anything that says work for hire in it, just cross that off before you sign it. Okay, next topic. How do you get your artwork on TV sets and movie sets? There are actually companies out there. I'll give you the name of one of them, Film Art LA. They're in Los Angeles. There's many companies like this where movie set personnel, I forget their official title, people who create the movie sets and the props and everything that you're going to see on the TV screen, they will rent artwork or license artwork for sets. And usually they'll go directly to those companies that specialize in that. And it's usually in cities, really it's only in cities where movies are filmed. Like LA, there's tons of companies like that in LA because a lot of movies are filmed there. Okay, in the comments, my longtime Instagram buddy C.A. Villamy says, I've signed work for hire and service providers agreements, never again. Good, I am so glad. I am saving your butt for the future. Yay. If I can save just one person with these videos, then I have done my job. And you might be wondering, well, what if I refuse to sign a work for hire agreement? Or what if I refuse to transfer my copyrights? I'll tell you, this is where you have to learn to feel comfortable communicating with your client. One thing I always say, I will say, well, it is our business model to retain all of our copyrights. But I will tell you, I won't be allowing another company that's a direct competitor of yours use the artwork for the same thing. Because I wouldn't do that. I think that would be the wrong thing to do for everyone involved. Usually I can convince people. Now, most people are not going to argue with your business model. So use that term, business model. It stops people in their tracks. Because would you go into Nordstrom and complain about their business model? Haley wrote, the UPS man just dropped your book off. Love the feel of it. Oh, thank you, Haley. Let me know how you like it. Let me know what works for you. I hope it becomes your Bible. Here's a question from another longtime artist, friend, client, Creative Cookie is her name on Instagram. What are some red flags when dealing with a new client? When you're talking to someone for the first time, a new client, ask a lot of questions. Get a feel for what they want, what they need, if you can give it to them, and if they are a viable client. A viable client is somebody who wants you to do work for them that you are capable of doing, because that's important, because you have to be a good vendor. They have to be a good client, but you have to be good too. And I'm gonna, I don't talk about that very often because I always assume that when I'm talking to artists, they know that they have to provide quality work, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I got a really big lesson about being on the client side. About 1.5 years ago, I hired a graphic designer to do some work for me. I paid him $700 to do 2 different projects. That's a lot of money. And I owed him more, but we got a little bit into it and he did a little bit of the work and he became very difficult to work with. He was always too busy for me. The work that he did provide me was not usable. And it was really frustrating for me. I couldn't use it. I wanted my money back, but I didn't bother because I knew I wouldn't get it back. So I just let it go. But I learned a big lesson, and that is, while we want our clients to be respectful, we have to be respectful. We have to not take a job that you're not going to do well. If you, let's say you're a painter, you're really good at abstracts. I mean, this is kind of an extreme example, and then somebody says, hey, I want to pay you $3,000 to do a portrait. And you can kind of do portraits, but you're not that good at it. Don't take the job. Refer it to a portrait artist, because you have no business doing something that you're going to do a crappy job at. Now, on the other hand, to go back to the question, what are some red flags? Now we're going to talk about clients. There are some crappy clients out there. You can, first of all, if they're not willing to pay a deposit, I use the deposit as the biggest separator between a good client and somebody who is not committed. A lot of artists will start work on something without any payment up front, and they are 100% of the time the artist that gets screwed over. No one's going to screw you over if they pay you a deposit. So if someone commissions you to do something, whether it's graphic design, taking photographs, doing a painting, making pottery, I don't care what it is, lettering, get a deposit up front. We get 50% up front. Some artists only ask for 30% up front. I don't care how much you get up front. You can ask for $50 up front. The dollar amount doesn't matter as much as the person is willing to open their wallet or PayPal you the money or direct deposit the money to you. If they are willing to send you money to get you started, now you've got their commitment, because money is a commitment. I bet you have never bought a plane ticket unless you were fully committed to getting on that airplane. That's commitment, spending the money. Let's see, what else can I say? What's more red flags is, you can avoid a lot of bad clients by having a lot of conversations with them and getting crystal clear up front about what their expectations are of you. And you have to tell them what your expectations are. So when someone comes to you and says, how much does it cost to have you create this for me? Then you ask them some questions, get a full understanding, then send them a price quote, and included in that price quote is your little statement that you retain the copyrights and a payment requirements. 50% up front to start the work, full balance is due upon completion. And you can also put limits on the number of sketches. If there's a sketch process, you could limit that to 3 changes, up to 3 sketch changes, and anything beyond that will be an additional fee. The reason I limit sketch changes, we used to not limit them. And back when we let people make 1 million changes, guess what? They made 1 million changes. They would change their mind, which was a lot of work to come up with new sketches. Then Drew and I decided, you know what? We're going to limit it to 3 sketches, include it in the price. And after that, there's a additional sketch fee. It's so funny. As soon as we implemented that, I'm telling you, we have never gone beyond 3 sketches. Because what happens is the client gets crystal clear on what they want, and they become very good at communicating that. And they get less crazy picky about it. Here's a question from Michelle. Do you ask buyers to sign a sale of artwork agreement prior to shipping? I don't bother with that. I know artists that do, and I haven't found it to be necessary. What I think, and if that makes you feel better, do it, but it's almost like this overly formal step when someone's buying a piece of artwork, like if they're buying a painting. Now, if it's a commercial client, I think it's good to get signatures on things. But for like a collector, it could kind of put a little damper on the relationship, requiring them to sign something. But it's your decision. I don't want to bother with that. But what I do instead of that, which I think serves the same purpose, is when I give them a price quote in writing, everything is specified. And according to an attorney that I've worked with in the past, she told me that if you put something in writing, even if the client doesn't sign it, but then they follow your instructions to pay the deposit, that's their legal agreement when they paid you that deposit that you requested. I've never had a problem because I make it a point to really do a good job of communicating up front. So I've never had a problem with anyone after the fact with anything, to my knowledge, not from private collectors. Anyway, the problems I've had is with people who are not customers and stealing the work. That's really the problems I've run into. And I've talked about that in another video. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is how do you get the most out of being featured, having your work featured in either a magazine or a museum. Absolutely. If your work's featured in a museum, hire a professional photographer, or if you're a professional photographer, get photos of your work hanging in the museum. Get photos or copies of any literature and brochures that shows your work, and send out a press release. Make a big deal about it. Put it on your website. Send a press release out to local newspapers, global newspapers. Make a story out of it. Okay, one last thing, because I like what Frutal wrote. Family and friends seem to be the ones with alligator arms. Alligator arms? What does that mean? I don't know. Okay, just off the top of my head, I'm gonna guess that what you're saying is family and friends are the worst when it comes to being bad clients, maybe. But if you have a family member or a friend who is commissioning you to do work, treat them just like a client. Be as formal with them as you are with your clients. Because here's the thing, when you're in business, you train people to treat you in a certain way. So if family and friends don't want to pay you, it's your fault because you've trained them. Sorry, I'm being blunt here, but when I'm blunt, I teach lessons that way. What you can do with family and friends, and Drew and I do this all the time, we give them good deals because we love them, we want to do things for them, but we can't do it for free because it costs a lot of money to live in this town with 2 kids and a gallery rental, and just life in general costs money. So, and Drew's time is money. But we do give discounts, friends and family discounts, and we say thank you, thank you, thank you, and we say no a lot also. Drew hates painting helmets, and just recently one of our dear friends asked him to paint a helmet. Now, when we were young, we would say yes because we didn't want to say no. You feel bad saying no. Now we just say no. We say, you know, Drew, we can't charge you enough to make it worth his while to paint it. But why don't you put a sticker on it? That's what I told this good friend. And he said, okay, well, thanks. You know, I didn't really know. So learn how to say no to the things that are going to be painful for you, and give your friends and family a 20% discount off your regular prices. And thank them for supporting you as an artist. And that's what you say. Thank you for supporting me. This means so much to me that you would hire me to do this work for you. And because you're a close friend, or because you're my aunt, I'm going to give you 20% off. That's it. And you know what? They'll appreciate it or they won't. If they don't want to pay you, they'll kind of slink away, and that's okay. Let them. You've just trained them that they have to pay you. That's it for today. You can watch reruns of these. I'm posting them on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. And please, if you are on YouTube, would you please sign up for my YouTube channel? Subscribe to my channel. And also, if you don't already have my book where I talk about all this stuff in detail, Art, Money, Success on Amazon.com. Just do an Amazon search, Maria Brophy, Thanks, you all. I'm so glad you were all here today. Bye.